More countries are closing their embassies in Yemen's capital, Sana'a. The UN has warned of dire consequences if the crisis is not resolved soon. So what's next for Yemen? Is it now on a path to further conflict? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the program. I'm Hazem Sika. It's been over a week since Houthi rebels in Yemen took over the government, and the international community has responded with grave concern. Several Western countries evacuated their embassies this week. Saudi Arabia became the first Gulf state to do so on Friday, and the United Arab Emirates followed a day later. With the Arab world's poorest nation in a political, economic and humanitarian crisis, many are concerned if the Houthis can manage to govern Yemen at all. We'll get to our discussion in a moment. First, Hashim Al-Barra sets up the story for us.
This is Dhamar, a city south of the capital Sana'a. The Shia Houthis are in control of parts of the city, but people are worried. Protesters are out on the streets to denounce what they say is a Houthi crackdown on activists and opponents.
They kept beating me, torturing me for hours. They wanted false confessions, things that I was never involved in. They wanted me to lie and say that Nobel laureate Tawakkul Karman and other figures were paying us to protest against them, that American and British organizations are instigating the youth in Yemen against them, that they are paying us money to protest against the Houthis. All lies.
Anti-Houthi protests are spreading across the country. In the city of Ib, many gathered in the main square to express their solidarity with President Abdrabbu Mansour Hadi, who was recently forced to resign. Last week, Shia Houthis dissolved parliament and said they would run the country on their own for a period of 2 years until elections are held. The coup was denounced by the international community. The UN is renewing efforts to bring the factions together, including calling for new powers for its envoy, Jamal bin Omar. Many countries have evacuated their embassies in the capital Sana'a, including the US, which has been actively engaged in drone attacks against al-qaeda in Yemen. But there's growing concern that a power vacuum could lead to more violence and instability. Hashim Al-Barra, Al Jazeera.
Well, the UN Security Council met in New York on Thursday to discuss the crisis in Yemen, and Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said the Council must get involved.
Yemen is collapsing before our eyes. We cannot stand by and watch. Our focus must be on helping the Yemeni people to re-establish a legitimate government authority as soon as possible.
A UN Special Envoy to Yemen, Jamal bin Omar, stressed that Yemen is on the brink of civil war.
Today, Yemen is at a crossroads. Either the country will descend into civil war and disintegration, or it will find a way to get the transition back on track.
So let's bring in our guests now. In Sana'a, we have Hussein Al-Bukhaiti, a Houthi supporter and Yemeni activist. Joining us from Jeddah, Hussein Shobokshi, columnist for Asharq Alawsat newspaper, and in Manchester, Mohammed Jumeh, columnist and editor for Quds Al Arabi newspaper. Good to have you all with us, gentlemen. Hussein Al-Bukhaiti, let me start with you. What is next for Yemen? You've heard the dire warnings there from diplomats, and a lot of people are looking for the answer to that question to the Houthis.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We have been hearing warnings from the outside and from the UN for almost 5 years. Nothing has really changed in Yemen. The only thing now we have, Ansarullah, the Houthi, they want the full implementation of the national dialogue by building a new government, and for every parties to join us in this new coalition or new partnership. The problem that we have now, we have them before, like al-qaeda and the vacuum of power. We had it for the last 4 years.
Well, you talk about building a national dialogue, yet the Houthis have essentially seized much of the capital, Sana'a. They seized government buildings by force. They have the former President Hadi and his advisors under virtual house arrest. Is this the kind of setting in which any sort of a meaningful dialogue can take place?
Yeah, of course, because I mean, when Hadi resigned and the government resigned, they resigned at the same time. They wanted Yemen to put Yemen into chaos. They created that vacuum, and they were blaming the Popular Committee and especially Ansarullah. They were blaming them for this vacuum, which was created mainly lately by this resignation. So the Revolution Committee has to take step to take full responsibility and to seize like some key areas in Sana'a and elsewhere. So now they are responsible for anything that for the security situation in Sana'a. And I hope like the negotiations now are going really well, and soon we might hear an agreement.
Hussein Shobokshi, what's your view on this? Obviously, Saudi Arabia is looking at this with grave concern. They've withdrawn their staff from the embassy there. But how much of this is down to the miscalculations and the perceived mismanagement of the situation in Yemen by Mansour Hadi and his predecessor, Ali Abdullah Saleh?
Well, when a leading group of Iranian parliamentarians announced that the Houthi is the new Hassan Nasrallah and Ansarullah is the new Hezbollah in Yemen and our ambitions are endless, this sends waves of worries and unrest in neighboring countries, including Saudi Arabia. The Iranian agenda is not becoming mysterious anymore. It is basically a project of occupation. They have done so in Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and they're doing that in Yemen today.
So you're saying that Iranian elements are supporting the Houthis in Yemen? That's what you're saying?
They're not supporting, they are funding, they are coaching, they are monitoring, they are mentoring, they are guiding, and they are basically pointing the finger where to go next. It is much more than just the lip service or diplomatic support. There is an element of control to that group. The group has risen in a very strange and odd way. It had defied every possible political theory in Yemen, and it does not have the mass support it claims that it does. And this will automatically, I think, force a group of Yemens rather than one Yemen, because we are seeing voices of dissent now in Hudaydah, in Taz, and obviously in the south that are opposing to the direction that the Houthis are taking. They have simply dissolved parliament, dissolved the constitution, and are changing the rules of the game with very strange and malicious external intervention.
Mohammed Jumeh, how did we get to this point in Yemen? Obviously, the country has, unfortunately, a long and checkered history in this region. But there was a certain amount of hope a couple of years back when Ali Abdullah Saleh finally agreed to step down. Mansour Hadi took over, and there was this kind of semblance of a promising transitional democracy, yet it's gone from that to becoming a virtual failed state. I mean, how did we get to that point?
Well, when you hear your guest in Sana'a saying that everything is okay and the image is fantastic, and he was talking positively, that's concerning to me, because the Houthis are not completely aware about what are they doing in the country, what are they taking the country to. The country is collapsed now economically, politically, and it's gonna be in an isolation, international isolation and regional isolation. The most important delegates and diplomats in Yemen are now withdrawn, and your guest in Sana'a is trying to pretend that everything is okay and nothing had happened. And the problem is, yes, as you said, we came to the point that we finished the national dialogue. We agreed on most, about 99% of our, disputing issues in Yemen, and all parties in Yemen agreed on these issues. It came to the national dialogue document, which on it all parties agreed. But eventually the Houthis, they took over the capital and they started their military coup, which is nothing can describe but a military coup. This is the only word we have to use in this case. Now we have the Houthis, and the Houthis are getting it worse because they are getting the al-qaeda to get involved, and they are getting other tribes, Sunni tribes, to get involved. And the problem is the Houthis cannot control the whole country. They don't have the ability, the political and the economical ability to control the whole country. And unfortunately, we are, if not we started the civil war in Yemen, we are going to that way.
Well, we want to get Hussein Al-Bukhaiti's response to some of that in just a moment. But first, let's broaden this out a little bit. Talk about the Gulf Cooperation Council, which has condemned the Houthi takeover in Yemen, calling it a coup. It says the takeover, in their words, endangers the security, stability, sovereignty and territorial integrity of Yemen. In response, the Council has said it will take all the necessary measures to defend Gulf interests. It has also urged the UN Security Council to take action and restore the government of Abdurrabu Mansour Hadi. So, Hussein Al-Bukhaiti, it does seem from what we've just heard that the Houthis have a lot to answer for here, and they have a big battle on their hands to unite the country. What do you say to that?
I mean, the Houthi, when their first answer was to that vacuum that was created, is the constitutional declaration. And we have to point out that the articles in the constitutional declaration, like to form, dismissal of the parliament, and the formation of the new national Congress of 551, and as well to appoint a presidential council of 5 members. This was the goals of the revolution of 2011. The people who are watching, they haven't got a clue maybe about that, but it's the same goals of 2011. Ansarullah, the Houthis and the Revolution Committee, they wanted these goals that they were not met after 2011 revolution. And about the Gulf statements, I mean, first of all, what have they done to Yemen after the 2011 revolution? What have they done to Yemen when they had a great relation with Ali Abdullah Saleh for 33 years? They haven't done any good to Yemen. Only by Saudi Arabia, they used to support extremists in Yemen, and now they support in al-qaeda, and as well in Syria. When our guest in Saudi Arabia, he said that Iran want to do in Yemen the same they did in Syria. Who started the civil war in Syria? Who supported the terrorists in Syria? Who created Jabhat al-Nusra? Who created Daesh in Syria? You know that King Abdullah, God bless his soul, he had an order that everyone who he gave 2-month notice for everyone who's fighting, for every Saudis who's fighting in Syria. And they said if this 2 months will end, then anyone who the government can prove he fought in Syria, he will be sentenced to 5 to 20 years. So they done that after the destruction of Syria. And in Iran, it's just what they say about Iran doing in Yemen is all conspiracy. They haven't got any proof. If the Yemeni government, if Ali Abdullah Saleh, they haven't caught anybody. They haven't. It just all how say it, they read it on the news or in Sahafa net. And just I want to answer to our guest in London when he said, I seen that everything is okay in Yemen. Yeah, everything is okay in Yemen. I know maybe better because you staying in London. And if you see the situation, the security situation, especially in Sana'a where I live, it's great. It has never been like this. Because before we had Hadi, we had the government, we had al-qaeda, they all cooperate.
I think the security situation has never been like this in Yemen in terms of the worst scenario. I think what you did in Yemen is absolute chaos. When you say that the president resigned, you forced him to resign. You forced him, the Houthis forced him to resign.
Yes, he
hasn't resigned by himself, by his own choice. When you say he meant to create this chaos, he didn't mean to create it. You created it. You forced the president and the prime minister to resign, and you wanted. And when you talk about the dialogue, this is just a joke. This is not a dialogue. This is just you keep the parties, the whole parties in a hall, and your representative in this hall just giving them instructions, and you call this dialogue. It is not. And so many parties now are going to withdraw because it is not a dialogue. It is not a negotiation. It is just a dictation between from your side, from your representative, to the other parties.
Right.
So we don't need to get things mixed together so that we make, like, you know, a positive image. When you talk about terrorism, who created Ib, for example? Ib is a peaceful city. Nothing wrong had happened before in Ib. And when your forces get into Ib, you just created
you know that al-Qaeda was in Radama and was in Ib and was in
Hussein Al-Bukhaiti, I'll let you respond to that.
This is
By the way, you didn't
let me just jump in here for a second, if I may. Let me just jump in here for a second. Hussein Al-Bukhaiti, I'll let you respond.
In a sectarian response. You didn't fight al-Qaeda because they are terrorists.
Mohammed, I appreciate your passion for this, but we've got to...
You think they are Sunni, and that's getting it worse because it created more supporters to al-Qaeda.
There is nothing Sunni and Shia in Yemen. We all Yemenis.
Shi'i and al-Qaeda Sunni. So what you are doing is you are getting al-Qaeda more support.
All right, Mohammed, you've made your point on that now. You made your point on that now. Let's get Hussein Al-Bukhaiti's response briefly, and then we'll come back to Hussein Shobokshi.
Yeah, I mean, when he said like Ib was peaceful, al-Qaeda was in Ib, and there was attacks even before the Popular Committee has entered Ib. There was many attacks in Al-Udayn, in Radama, in Al-Udayn. There was many people were killed by al-Qaeda.
Mohammed Jumeh, just let him finish.
Some of them were killed, and some. Let me finish. And just I want to always, if you see now everybody talking about al-Qaeda and al-Qaeda, I mean, we have al-Qaeda even since Ali Abdullah Saleh. What was the American drone doing in the last 5 years? Who were they fighting? They were fighting, they claimed they were fighting al-Qaeda. So al-Qaeda exists in Yemen, and it's not something new or
Hussein Shobokshi, what's your take on all of this? I know you want to respond to what you've just been hearing in the last couple of minutes.
I find it funny what your guest from Sana'a has said, that Saudi Arabia supports al-Qaeda. This is not a political statement, this is a comical statement. I would not even dare insult your intelligence by commenting on this. Hezbollah, the Houthis,
no, you have to comment. I say that. So.
No. I will not comment. This is silly. The Hezbollah, the Houthis are terrorist groups.
Because you haven't got it. Because you know it's right.
They are killing in Yemen. They're killing in Syria. They're killing in Lebanon. They're killing in Iraq. We all know this. These are the arms of Iran. These are terrorist groups, and there are proofs. You just ask the Yemenis involved on the ground. What the Iranian influence is doing. The trainees in Djibouti and Eritrea are sent from there to Yemen with arms. These are known intelligence reports that have been published and are available. The Iranian presence in Saada has been known to be there for quite some time through the charity organizations first, and then it was blown out training sessions for the Houthis, rebels, who became repositioned under the words Ansar Allah, and then they started talking in a more political tone. However, we need to know that the Houthis don't have the acceptance regionally, nor do they have it nationally in Yemen. And by blaming the Saudis and claiming that they're funding al-Qaeda, this is simply silly and comical, and the Yemenis need to take care of their own problems before they spread their problems across the board, which we will have a problem regionally if the Yemeni problem is not contained. And Iran wants this to happen. It has made it very clear that its aim is Saudi Arabia.
Hussein Shobokshi, I want to ask you about the GCC's role in all of this, as we just discussed earlier. Our guest in Sana'a brought up the point there about what has the GCC done in all of these years to help Yemen. And we mentioned earlier the fact that the country has come to this state of disarray. Shouldn't the Gulf countries have been more active in trying to aid the country?
Of course, in retrospect, in hindsight, of course, we can make this argument, and I think you have a valid point. Of course, there could have been much more done, but that doesn't say that we did not do. Yemen is a very tricky country. It has been a failing ground for many attempts from the Nasser era, from the Ottoman Empire era. Yemen is a very tricky country. It involves a lot of tribal, ethnic, and religious and sectarial issues that have to be dealt with. This is not making an excuse. Oman and Saudi Arabia are the two only bordering nations to Yemen, and they are members of the GCC. We need to tackle this problem with seriousness, and the urgency now is very vital, because I think this is the dying hours of saving a united Yemen. If not, Yemen will be divided into a minimum of 2 states. And this is due strictly to the interference of an external player, which is Iran in this case.
What evidence is that you mentioned that Iran was aiding the Houthis in several ways? Just give us an example, and be specific.
Well, I think the backing. Sure, I will be very specific. I did mention that the charity organizations that were involved in Saada initially were through Iranian pockets, and this was made very clear. Training of the rebels and arming them were cited in reports that were done in Eritrea and Djibouti and islands that were controlled by Iranians in the Red Sea, as well as the diplomatic effort that have been very clear and the media effort that have been very clear that the Houthi advancement in Yemen is part of the revolutionary project that Iran is sponsoring in the region. And they have made it very clear that they are rejoiced that Sana'a and as well as Beirut and Damascus and Baghdad are now 4 Arab capitals that are under the realm of Wilayat al-Faqih.
Hussein Al-Bukhaiti, your response to that?
I mean, all what he said about Iran, it just, I think, some stories he read them somewhere, a fairy story. I mean, we seen that the Gulf state, unlike Saudis, like Qatar, we see clearly their stand towards Syria and the support toward extremists in Syria. And as well in Yemen, they have in Saudi Arabia, they have it's not like a ministry, it's like a committee called the Yemeni committee. And this one, there is a prince, I don't know what his name, who was responsible of it. And their job was to bribe tribesmen in Yemen, to bribe gangs in Yemen, to bribe like Al-Ahmar family, who was the biggest corrupt family in I think in the Middle East. And those tribesmen, they used to attack the electricity installation, oil and gas pipeline in Marib. And this, every Yemeni, this is really, really clear. I mean, if the Saudis and the Gulf state want to help Yemen, they should first treat the Yemenis who work there like in a better way. Yeah, a lot of Yemenis who are detained by the Saudi government, they tortured, they treated like slaves. Some of them were burned, and everybody in Yemen know that.
I want to keep the focus.
Yemen,
I'm sorry to interrupt, Hussein.
Start with the people
I
who
want
are
to keep
in
the focus
country,
on this
show
to
them
Yemen,
some respect.
if I can. I want to get Mohammed Jumeh's take on this. If there is a deal for all Yemenis to come together, what form should it take?
Well, just let me mention about Iran. There was a very clear example, Iranian ship which was seized in Aden, and a committee from the international community, from the United Nations, came to see this ship which was full of weapons, and there were many detainees, many prisoners in Yemen until the Houthi came to Sana'a, and then they freed them. It's not like, you know, sort of rumors or something like that. It is real, and it's proven.
To that point.
But it's proved. I mean, I think the solution could be for the Houthis to understand that they cannot force the whole Yemenis to accept them. Yes, they can go to election, and if they want to control the country, welcome, but through the election, through voting, not through military and militia and these things. They cannot, because all parties in Yemen, all tribes have weapons, and they will defend themselves. They will use every kind of means to defend their regions, because we have now 6 regional states or regions in Yemen. We will defend, people will defend their own region. So if they want, they should go back to the national dialogue, to the Gulf Initiative, and then build on that. But taking Sana'a and putting the president in house arrest, and even the prime minister,
on that note, we are unfortunately going to have to leave it. We are out of time. I want to thank all 3 of our guests: Hussein Al-Bukhaiti in Sana'a, Hussein Shobokshi in Jeddah, and Mohammed Jumeh in Manchester. Thanks very much for being on Inside Story. That's it for another show. Thank you for joining us. Remember, if you want to add anything to today's show, just go to our program page at aljazeera.com. You can post your comments to us as well at Facebook. We're on facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And you can get in touch with me on Twitter on @Hazem Sika. From me and the whole team, bye for now.